So we finally are moving from the foot of Mount Sinai. I mean, it took us a while. I mean, the entire book of Leviticus, we were kind of stuck waiting for all of the preparations to happen. And toward the end of the book of Leviticus, we finally built the tabernacle. And then just this last Torah portion, last time we met, we entered into the book of Numbers, which I told you, I don't know why it's called Numbers, because in Hebrew it's called in the desert, but never mind that. We got ready. The last Torah portion, there's a beautiful Torah portion when we order all the 12 tribes to take their respective places in order for us to get ready for the marching through the wilderness to get to the promised land. At the center, we put the tabernacle with the tablets of the law, and we have ordained Aaron and his sons to be the priests, the Levites, and the Cohens are now in charge of our spiritual journey as we journey physically through the wilderness. And this week, as we are finally about to take our first steps in the wilderness, Aaron and his sons come and bless the assembled tribes. This is the Torah portion where you find the priestly blessing, what's called the Birkat Kohanim, the blessing of the Kohen, actually. The Kohanim, im at the end, is the mark of the masculine plural in Hebrew. So it's Kohanim, the Kohens in translation. So the blessing of the Kohen. Kohen is the word that we use to qualify the high priest in the temple. And it's a blessing that has come down through the generation up until this very day. There's actually two different ways of using the Birkat Kohanim, the blessing, the priestly blessing, the blessing of the Kohen. The Ashkenazi tradition only reserves that blessing for Shabbat and holy days, Shabbat and Yom Tov. That is the only days that you are allowed to say the blessing. And the reason the rabbis of the land of Ashkenaz tell us is because it's supposed to be a blessing that is done at times of joy in order to be able to really channel that blessing properly. And so you should only do it when you're rested. It's a Shabbat, it's a Yom Tov, it's a holiday, so it's appropriate. We Sephardim don't care about that. We say it anytime and everywhere, whenever and whatever, because we love it. Because we love it. It's the blessing, actually, everybody, both Ashkenaz and Sephard, are to bless our children on Friday night after the Kiddush, lighting candles around the table at home. You also bless your children. Birkat Kohanim. In the Sephardi tradition, we say it anytime. There's no restriction for saying it. And I personally like to say it. Those of you who don't know the blessing, you can find it actually on page 17 in your prayer book. And you're going to need it because I'm going to lecture you from the dais, from my podium about the blessing. Now, you're going to need it because I'm going to explore that with you tonight. It's going to be kind of fun, at least for me. If you're bored, just let me know. I love to say that blessing anytime I hear an ambulance pass by. You know, an ambulance passes by and I say, may God bless you and protect you. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, right? So I say it, in all kinds of occasions when I feel that it's appropriate to say it in those moments. We've maintained, as I said, this tradition, whether in the land of Ashkenaz or the land of Sepharad, since biblical times. It's one of the most ancient blessings. Obviously, it is right there in the book of Numbers. in the book of Bamidbar. And not only that, but I think there is something really unique and special that we still have to this day, descendants of the original Kohens and Levites of the temple. Anyone who has a name who is Kohen, Cohen, and all the different variations of that, we can assume that they are descendants of that tribe, of that initial tribe back in the time of the temples, 3,000 years ago. Anyone who's Levi, whether it's on the back of your jeans or Levin, or all of those names are all also variation on the theme of the tribe of Levi, who were also in charge of the temple and the sacraments for 1,000 years as we dwell in Jerusalem in the temple. So there's something, when we had Shelley Cohen come during high holidays and stand on the bima to share the blessing, he loved it himself so much to be able to step into that kind of a role and that kind of energy. But just to know that we have still to this day people who have that name who come from that tribe, something really powerful. And I think there is something very tribal about that, right? It reminds us Jews that our birthplace comes from tribal consciousness, that in fact we are all descendants of those tribes. The only three tribes that are survived history are Kohen, Levite, and what we call Klal Israel, the tribe of Yehuda. In fact, the word Jewish comes from the Hebrew Yehuda. Yehuda becomes Yehudi. A Yehudi is a member of the tribe of Yehuda. Like an American is a member of the tribe of America. So Yehudi is a member of the tribe of Yehuda. And those are only the three tribes that have survived. So we are all Yehudim or Yehudiot. And it's something just like powerful to remember that we're not just, just American, French, or wherever. There is a tribal identity that is part of our identity that goes back thousands of years. So look on page 17 and look at not the translation. Look at either the Hebrew or the transliteration. Either way is fine. And you'll see that, in fact, the blessing is divided into three different parts, three different verses. The first one is Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. That's the number one. Number two is Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'choneka. That's the number two. And then number three is Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but it's a very carefully written blessing. The part one is 3 words. Part 2 is 5 words. Part 3 is 7 words. So you go from 3 plus 2, 5 plus 2, 7. And there's no mistake. It was written on purpose in this kind of way. All right? If you look a little bit closer, now you're going to have to look at the Hebrew if you know the Hebrew. But these 3 parts are not just 3 words, 5 words, 7 words, but they are 15 letters, 20 letters, and then 25 letters. So in increments of 5, right? You're going to have to trust me on that if you don't want to start counting in the letters in Hebrew, which it's okay. It's fine. It's like, prove me wrong, just count. It's awesome. And if you add up 15 plus 20 plus 25, you get 60. Now, why do you get 60? Because we were born out of a consciousness that had that was connected to what was called the sexagesimal mathematical system, which believed that 60 was a primordial number. Right? So it's no mistake that we have 12 tribes, 12 times 5, A lot of what the Jewish law, for example, we said that the Sabbath is 1/60th of Gan Eden, of the Garden of Eden, of paradise, right? Every Shabbat is the taste, 1/60th of the taste of paradise, every Shabbat, right? We have a lot of things like that that has the number 60 at the center. And we got that, it's called sexagesimal system from, it was born and created, and then we stole it, obviously, because that's what we do. From the Sumerian tradition, from the Babylonian tradition, where we were exiled in 586 BCE. We were exiled there for 70 years. Some of us stayed there until the creation of the state of Iraq just 60 years ago. There was a Jewish community in Iraq for 2,500 years until we were kicked out by the Muslims in punishment of creating the state of Israel. But that's a different talk for a different time. But the Babylonian and the Sumerian had that mathematical system that we learned in the 2 generations that we were in Babylon, and that we brought back to Jerusalem in 516 BCE. And as we did that, we also brought back the Torah. The Torah didn't exist at the time of the first temple. Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the first temple in 586. We came back in 516, 70 years later, and we rebuilt it under the Persian Empire at that time. And so we know from the Torah, from the fact that those blessings are 60, that these blessings did not exist at the time of the first temple. We have very little knowledge of what kind of worship happened in the 500 years that we had the first temple standing. It was probably very different from what we know. Obviously, there was no Torah. The Torah didn't exist yet. We know there were parchments, in the basement of the temple. We know that probably Psalms was there, and that the priests, if you came to see the priest in the temple of Jerusalem, he would recite a psalm for you that was connected to what you came for. But other than that, we really have no idea what kind of worship happened at the time. The second temple, we know, was very different. And we know that the priestly blessing, the Birkat Kohanim, started at the time of the second temple. So let's say from 500 BCE through 70 CE, when the second temple was destroyed by the Romans. So it's just historically interesting to know that from the blessing we can tell historically when this was written. So in Torah and in our tradition, as we adopted this mathematical system of 60, the number 60 came to mean support. It came to mean completion. It came to represent Sabbath. The number 6, right? 6 times 10. So number 6 is the six days of creation before Shabbat. It came to represent the notion of rest. It connotes something that is finished, something that is completed. It reminds us of a kind of a fullness, So this blessing is a blessing that is pointing towards completion, towards fullness, toward a sense of a Sabbath kind of inner peace, a kind of safety and an interconnectedness. So you can tell from not just from the fact that it is 3, 5, and 7 words, or 20, or 15, 20, and 25 letters. You can see that it's a ladder, right? From the lower rung to the higher rung, from 3 to 5 to 7, right? From 15 to 20 to 25. There's a crescendo in the blessing itself. There's a lifting up. There's an ascending that is built into the blessing itself. To me, it's a concentric circle that are expanding from 3 to 5 to 7, from 15 to 20 to 20 to 25, right? More gets encompassed, more gets included, right? And it's It's a movement from contraction to expansion. And that's what you want in a blessing, right? It's a blessing that moves you from a place of contraction to a place of expansion. From a to right? So now let's look in a little more in more details. Let's look at this first three words. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May the Holy One blesses you and keeps you. This really, in that first step, in that first rung of the ladder, it really talks about physical and material blessing. May you be blessed with peace. May you be blessed, and may you be kept in health. Actually, I found a commentary by Rabbi Hertz. Rabbi Hertz sees the first part, may God bless you, as being blessed with health, abundance, and physical possessions, right? It's a material kind of a blessing. And then the last word, vayishmerecha, and may God keep you or protect you. His interpretation is kind of funny. He says that the blessing is so that we can be protected from being possessed by our possessions, right? So the first part is, may you live in abundantly, may you have a lot of possessions. And the second one is, may you be protected from being possessed by your possessions. And actually that is echoed by a Hasidic teaching that says, may you be protected from the evil results of material prosperity. Right? May you be protected from the evil results of material prosperity. And we know as Jews that every time we have dared to actually be prosperous, it had come to bite us, and still does, right? I mean, we can hear the anti-Semitic accusations waved at George Soros, right? Or the Rothschild, or any Jew that has ever had some kind of wealth is becoming target for insults, for anti-Semitism, for violence. We have been smeared for being the bankers, especially by the Nazis and the communist regimes, right? Every time we can finally be a little bit successful, we know, as the Hasidic masters taught, the evil that results in material wealth, at least for us. The second 5 words, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'choneka. That's such powerful blessing. Ya'er, the first word means, Ya'er means may he, or the divine, may she light, kindle, shine light. Panav elecha, shine the light of its presence toward you, right? V'choneka, with grace. But I read it a little bit differently than that. As you know, I always read things differently than how they are spelled out. Light connects me to enlightenment, right? The light of the presence is the light that awakens within each of us. It's not a light that comes beaming from out there, right? The light of God's presence is not like, God has a flashlight and it's like, okay, where are you? Oh, here. Here's the light of the divine shining upon you, right? That's not what it's talking about. It's talking about the light that awakens within us, the light of the presence of the One, and it's the light that we conceal, that we hide, because we can't handle it, right? We identify with that separate sense of self. We identify with the darkness and the cloudiness of a human life, with all its turmoil and all its challenges and all its aches and pains and whatever. We identify with that, and we ignore, at best, our inner light, the light of our inner being. We're so consumed by thoughts that we don't see the light that we are. And so this blessing is about telling us to remember that the light of the presence is right there within us. And that we, in fact, in every moment of our life, we are blessed with the grace of that presence. We walk in grace, moment to moment. Whatever our experience, actually. So you can really see that second blessing, we grow in expansiveness. It's no longer about materialism, about possessions, but it's about spiritual awakening. It's about opening our heart to the light within ourselves. It has some dualism in there, right? We still have the light of the divine shines upon us. So there's a sense that there's the divine and there is us. So we're going to have to wait for the third line to go a little deeper or a little broader. And then the third is the 7 words, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Yisa. So that's a fascinating word. Yisa. Yisa Adonai panav elecha. So it's the same Adonai panav elecha that we had in the second blessing in part 1 and part 2, right? But instead of Ya'er, this time is Yisa. So Ya'er panav elecha, we said that the light of the presence is awakening within you. Here, it's not just the light. It is the presence itself that is awakening within you. But it's awakening within you, Yisa. So when you use the word Yisa in Hebrew, in all other contexts in the Torah, it means lifting up. So the blessing is God lifts up God's presence within you. Right? We have this notion that God is above somewhere, looking down on us and blessing us from God's abode in the heavens, wherever that means, right? And that's not what the Hebrew is saying. The Hebrew is saying that God is lifting God up to bless, right? The divine is not looking down on us, but is looking up from within us. Right? It's the divine presence is looking up from within. So the awakening is an awakening from within. Again, God doesn't beam God's light or God's presence from out there. There is no out there. There is no out there. I mean, think about it. If there wasn't out there, then what kind of a God would that be? So God is out there, meaning God is not in here. So there is like territory that God cannot come in. What kind of a God is that? God is, prevented from entering specific spaces, specific territories, specific parts of the universe. That's not a God at all. That's not a God. I don't know what it is, but it's not a God, right? God has to permeate everything. If not, I don't know what we would call it. So it's appropriate for the blessing to remind us that the presence of the divine is awakening, is lifted up from within ourselves, from within this container, that God also is. I always say, and the Kabbalah is teaching us that this, what we are wearing, we call it a body, is in fact the garment of God, is God dressing up as each and every one of us. So you can look around and you can see all the ways that God is dressed up tonight. You got a nice shirt, I think. So, Yisa Adonai panav elecha, the divine presence emerges from within you. That's what I would read this to mean. And it's like, as God awakens from within you, God peers into God's self. God recognizes God's self in that moment. In that moment of blessing. And in that moment of God coming face to face with his own face, which is your face, there's a great peace that just flows through this garment of our body. There's a great peace that comes with that. Like there is no conflict anymore. It's not like the awakening in the second part of the blessing that we are one with the light of the divine. In the third blessing, the divine comes and takes possession of us. We are that. We are that through and through, completely through and through. And the candle of individuality that we thought we were so attached to, that candle, that flickering candle of individuality gets outshined by the light of the presence. It's still there, but it merges and dissolves into the bright light of the divine presence within us. Within us. We become, in fact, these unfathomable peace beyond all understanding, as some say. We become that unfathomable light of being. May it find you now. Amen.